You are listening to Julia's Trucking Cafe News Hour. Welcome to Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy that you're here and that you want to listen to the trucking news. As always, I have lots of news to get to, so let's get right to it. In our first story, a park trooper survives collision with a semi-truck driving on a highway shoulder. A police officer escaped with only minor injuries after a semi-truck smashed into a stopped patrol vehicle in Illinois. The accident happened back in September around 6 o'clock in the morning at St. Elmo, Illinois. According to the local news outlet, the trooper was parked on the right shoulder of eastbound Interstate 70 near milepost 76 with his lights on in order to assist a motorist when a semi-truck traveling east veered off the roadway onto the shoulder and into the back end of the stopped patrol car, with the trooper was still inside. Miraculously, the trooper's injuries were minor and he was released from the hospital later that day. 58-year-old trucker Pedro Espinoza and the motorist were also taken to a hospital for minor injuries. All were expected to make full recoveries. It is not clear why Espinoza was driving on the shoulder of the highway, but he has since been charged with violation of Scott's law, the move over law, failure to reduce speed to avoid an accident, and improper lane usage. Distracted driving, looked down for something, but yeah, he pretty much wiped that cruiser. And there again, if he was just sitting doing paperwork, a little editorial, if he was sitting doing paperwork, it would be a different story, but he was, reporting this accident, so it really can't fault him there. And in this story, police are unsure if an open container of alcohol is a factor in a crash with a semi that left a motorist dead. Also, if you would like to see what I'm talking about, you can find the videos at YouTube, Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour. Also on Rumble at Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour, and BitChute, BitChute.com. I'm on all three of those platforms, just in case YouTube takes me down. Anyways, let's get back to the news. Police say they are unsure if alcohol was involved in a wreck that left one woman dead and a semi-truck damaged. This incident happened back September 27th at around 2:30 in the morning in Los Angeles, California. Los Angeles police say that a woman in her 20s either fell asleep or passed out while driving her Prius west on Victoria Boulevard. She then crashed into the back of the semi parked on the side of the road and was killed on impact. Upon investigation of the incident, police discovered an open container of alcohol inside the Prius, but say it is still unclear if the alcohol was a factor in the crash. The truck driver was unhurt in the incident. As you could see on the video, he was pulling a container, and you're not going to move those very far. And in this next story, a New York truck driver was ordered out of service for fleeing the crash scene and also receiving alcohol violations. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration issued a federal order forbidding a truck driver to operate following a crash that occurred back in August. On September 21st, New York licensed truck driver Babir M. Morodov was ordered not to operate a commercial vehicle on interstate commerce, according to the agency. The order was issued in response to a crash that occurred at 11:18 a.m. on August 4th in Cortland Township, Michigan. Authorities say that the truck driver failed to stop at a red light and hit another vehicle, then, quote, left the scene of the crash, but later was located and taken into custody in adjoining Montcalm County, end quote, by Michigan State Police. When a blood alcohol test was administered shortly before 5 p.m. on the same day, the truck driver tested with a blood alcohol content of 0.17. Commercial vehicles are in violation of federal law if they show a blood alcohol content of greater than 0.04 or 0.04. Michigan State Police also reportedly discovered open beer and liquor bottles in the cab of the driver's truck. He's facing the following charges in the state of Michigan: operating while intoxicated, second offense, failure to stop and identify after a collision, and alcohol open container in the vehicle. He must complete the required return to duty process overseen by substance abuse professional before he's allowed to operate a commercial motor vehicle. Excuse me. It's early in the morning and I have a frog in my throat. Needy. And in this story, a trial begins for a truck driver who's charged in the death of an animal rights protester giving water to pigs that was in his trailer that was going to market. These activists, I'm sorry, I grew up on a dairy farm. There again, a little editorial. These activists don't understand pigs are raised for slaughter. Pigs are raised to feed the rest of us who eat meat, like myself. So when you water them, that makes the meat very soggy and bad because they don't have enough time to digest it, to go into their muscle, and pigs don't sweat. That it makes the pork and the pork chops and the hams and everything mushy and bad. I don't know if they did it on purpose or what. She feels sorry for him and everything, but that meat is bad, and that truckload of pigs probably got rejected. And which is money to the farmers, the pig farmer. He's losing money. Don't feel, poor piggies are hot and all this kind of crap. When they take them to market, there's a reason. They're getting sold by hundredweight. And they don't need to be watered down. You know, in the long run, yeah, they'll help the farmer because they're heavier, but it ruins the meat, so they could be rejected at the packing house. You know, they're grown up and raised to be food for the rest of us. I'm not going to be living on veggies, sorry, and tofu. I eat meat. And there's a lot of people I know that eat meat. Anyway, back to the story. The original story, a truck driver is accused of causing the death of an animal rights activist outside of a slaughterhouse, and he would go on trial. Brussels transport truck driver, who had not been publicly identified, is facing careless driving traffic charge in a Burlington court in connection with the death of 65-year-old Regan Russell. There again, retired granny, you got nothing better to do. The traffic charge could result in a monetary fine or prison sentence of up to 2 years, according to the CBC. Russell was killed outside of Fairman's pork plant in Burlington, Ontario. This happened in Canada back in June of 2020, last year. Russell was participating in an animal rights protest that involved giving water to pigs before slaughter with a group of Toronto Save the Pigs. She was struck by the Brussels transport truck hauling the pigs into the plant and died from her injuries. The protest was held in response to the passage of Bill 156, also known as Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Safety Act 2020. The bill allows Ontario government to issue escalating fines of up to $15,000 for a first offense and $25,000 for subsequent offenses to protesters who interfere with livestock haulers. Well, at least some government is getting smart. Animal rights groups have called on authorities to upgrade the charge against the truck driver from a traffic offense to a criminal offense. Toronto Pig Save had planned demonstrations at the courthouse. Russell's stepson also issued a statement calling for criminal charges. Tyler Jutsi, whose family owns Brussels Transport, told the local news after incident that the trucking company had been targeted by animal rights groups after Russell's death. They threatened to blow up trucks. They threatened to sabotage trucks. They threatened to burn the slaughterhouse down. See, they're getting violent. It's not a peaceful protest anymore. They're getting frickin' violent, and that's uncalled for. Now, here's an update. The trial and the death of this animal rights activist had been delayed. And this is as of 2:30. The date of this article was back in September 27th. A justice of the peace was not present in the Burlington Provincial Offenses Act Court, where the trial was set to begin, forcing a delay of the trial. Russell was killed during a demonstration activity outside of the Burlington slaughterhouse when she was struck by a truck while giving water to pigs in a livestock trailer. It shows her giving them outside of the livestock trailer, not inside. So we will see and keep you posted on what's going on with that. And up next, a mother is arrested for a collision with a semi-truck that took her son's life. Serious charges have been filed against a mother who crashed her car into an oncoming semi-truck earlier this year, killing her son. The charges for the June 20th accident were filed last week in Miami County, Florida. According to the local news outlet, 28-year-old Brittany Kirchgessner was driving along Highway 36 at South Walnut Street just before 7 in the morning when she crossed the center line and crashed head-on into an oncoming semi-truck. The impact seriously injured her and her son, Daniel Vorez. Vorez was transported to a nearby children's hospital for treatment, but soon succumbed to his injuries. Kirchgessner sustained serious injuries but has since recovered. Truck driver 49-year-old Billy Schaffner was not hurt in the incident, but I'm sure that has seriously messed with this Mr. Schaffner's head. Kirchgessner is suspected, the driver is suspected, the driver of the car, let me correct that, is suspected to have been under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of the crash, and was arrested on charges of aggravated vehicular homicide. Now, you all heard the story, if you ever listened to C.W. McCall, about Wolf Creek Pass. If you have not heard of C.W. McCall, you can look on YouTube, and there is a song about Wolf Creek Pass. And in this story, speed and a brake failure is possible factors in the crash at Wolf Creek Pass. That killed the truck driver. This happened September 27th. It happened on Tuesday, September 21st. A truck driver lost his life on a notorious stretch of winding mountain road in Colorado called Wolf Creek Pass. Troopers say that 54-year-old truck driver Rifayat Podzik was driving a 2010 Peterbilt with a trailer on Colorado Highway 160 near mile marker 160 in Mineral County when the crash occurred. This is from the Colorado State Police. Preliminary investigation shows a vehicle traveling westbound on 160 at a high rate of speed, unknown speed currently, down a steep grade. The vehicle approached a sharp left curve and steered right, impacting a cement barrier and down the embankment, hitting several trees and breaking the tractor. Mr. Pozniak was ejected during the sequence. No other vehicles were involved. It is believed speed and possible brake failure contributed to the crash. No drugs or alcohol are suspected. According to the Highway Patrol, 2015 to 2019, there were 47 semi-truck crashes on the west side of Wolf Creek Pass. That is a 25-mile-an-hour speed zone with a sharp left-hand hook at the bottom. Anybody who's listening to this show needs to slow down, and you need to share this with people that you know. I have t-shirts and everything else to help my cause of slowing the fuck down. They're motorists anymore, cars and trucks, the foot to the floor everywhere you go, and shit like this happens. You know, it is just ridiculous that my truck does 70 to 72. I have people passing me like I'm sitting still. What the hell? And then you're going to boo-hoo and cry because a driver dies? That's what happens, people. Anyway, enough of my preaching. Up next, a truck driver's arrested for a rolling domestic battery after wife's thrown salad leads to a physical altercation. These trucks are 4x6 cells. People are going to have disagreements. Husband and wives fight, and they argue. You know, it's going to happen. Back to the story. A truck driver was arrested for, quote, rolling domestic battery, end quote, after an altercation with his wife in Indiana. This happened back September 24th. According to the local news, the altercation occurred when a truck driver, 49-year-old David L. Call, and his wife began arguing at an Applebee's, prompting her to throw her salad at him and leave the restaurant. When Call followed his wife out of the restaurant, he found that his things had been thrown out of the cab of his truck and his wife was attempting to rip down his CB. In response, Call shoved his wife and her head struck the cab door and began bleeding. Call's wife then explained that Call attacked her soon after the initial accident, punching her in the ribs and pulling her hair before repeatedly slamming her head against the truck door. She then called 911, but the two ended up inside the semi-truck traveling southbound Interstate 69 near Indiana 3267 interchange. A trooper was eventually able to locate the semi and attempted to pull the truck over, but Call did not stop for another 4 miles. Once stopped, the woman explained to the trooper that Call had ignored her demands to stop the truck and let her out, and had said he would not stop until they had reached Kentucky, his home state. The trooper noted that his wife's hair was caked and matted with blood and that Call had a cut on his face. The wife claimed that the cut was from her wedding ring striking Call as she slapped him. Call then told police that he had an active protective order directing him to stay away from his wife had been issued 2 days earlier, as well as a strangulation charge from an arrest a few days before. Call was taken into custody and booked in Delaware County Jail on preliminary charges of domestic battery, criminal confinement, and invasion of privacy. He has since been released on a $12,500 bond. So they've been having domestic violence in their relationship for a while. It wasn't just the initial incident. And in our next story, $24 million in meth is seized from a semi-trailer at a Texas checkpoint. U.S. Customs and Border Protection recently seized a staggering amount of illegal drugs from a commercial vehicle arriving into the U.S. from Mexico. The drugs were seized on September 23rd at Eagle Pass Camino Real Cargo Facility in Eagle Pass, Texas. Officers encountered a 2010 Freightliner tractor hauling an empty box trailer arriving from Mexico. The truck was referred for a secondary inspection via a canine unit, a non-intrusive imaging radar, or X-ray, and then a physical inspection. Officers discovered 1,221 pounds of suspected methamphetamine within the walls of the trailer. The estimated street value of the seized drugs is $24,426,968. He seized the drugs, truck, and trailer. And that's usually a weekly deal there. And up next, a driver is seriously hurt in a bridge crash that obliterated his rig. If you're watching this on video, it is kind of graphic. Viewer discretion is advised. A truck driver was seriously hurt after driving into a bridge pier in Missouri. Accident happened on September 27th in New Madrid County, Missouri. According to the local news, 45-year-old unnamed driver was heading north on Interstate 55, 3 miles south of Matthews, when he ran off the left side of the road and struck a bridge pier. The force of the wreck destroyed a 20 feet of guardrail and a bridge pier, damaging a second bridge pier and obliterated the cab of the 2017 Kenworth. Truck driver was airlifted to St. Louis Hospital with serious injuries, and at that time his condition was not known. They do not name the driver. And up next, Fed seized $228,000 in undeclared cash following a commercial motor vehicle inspection at the Canada border. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized a large amount of cash from commercial vehicles at a checkpoint in Detroit. The first and largest cash seizure occurred early Tuesday morning near the Ambassador Bridge port of entry. According to the Canada Border Patrol news release, the cash was discovered by officers during a series of outbound commercial vehicle inspections conducted on vehicles leaving the U.S. Officers seized $200,000 in undeclared U.S. currency due to failure to report. The driver was released from custody without further incident. Hours later, they seized another $28,000 in undeclared cash from an outbound commercial conveyance at the same location. The cases have been turned over to Homeland Security. Travelers arriving and departing from the U.S. with currency or monetary instruments at a combined amount of more than $10,000 are required to file a report of international transportation of currency or monetary instruments, according to the Canada Border Patrol. Border Patrol says that individuals may petition to have seizure cash returned, but they must be able to prove the source of the currency and that the intended use of the money was legitimate. There is no limit to the amount of money that travelers may carry when crossing U.S. borders, but reporting is required under what they said, and failure to comply can result in civil and criminal penalties and may lead to loss of undeclared monetary instruments. So you just declare it at the border if you have more than $10,000 in cash on your person. In this story, a Massachusetts state trooper is injured after a trucker falls asleep at the wheel. A Massachusetts state trooper was hurt in September after a truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and smashed into his parked cruiser. The accident happened on southbound Interstate 95 near the Massachusetts Turnpike intersection in Weston just before midnight on September 28th. According to the local news outlet, the trooper was parked on the side of the interstate with his lights on, protecting a crew trimming trees encroaching on the roadway when he was struck by an oncoming semi-truck as the driver fell asleep. The force of the impact caused the rig to jackknife, broke off the cruiser's steering wheel, and pinned the trooper inside. Although he was injured, the trooper was able to radio in the incident himself. He was later transported to a nearby hospital, has since then been discharged, and will remain on injured leave. Investigation of the incident reveals that 27-year-old trucker from Canada woke up at the last second and attempted to hit the brakes, but was unable to stop in time. The driver is facing charges of negligent operation, failure to move over, and marked lane violation. But yet you want 18 to 21-year-olds or under 18 to be driving rigs. Who falls asleep? I mean, this kid was 27 years old and still fell asleep. And you expect these teenagers to drive a rig? Come on. Come on. And if you're watching the video, look at this crazy game that they're doing now. Atlanta Police Department issues a new warning about disturbing semi-truck stowaway social media game. Atlanta Police Department shared a warning about a dangerous new social media game after observing an uptick in people hitching a ride on moving semis. A statement from the police department points to several recent incidents of people riding on the outside of moving semi-trucks on our local highways and calls for those who are tempted to try it themselves for an Instagram notoriety to remember that it could result in death, injury, and multi-vehicle crashes. On September 17th, social media users shared a video of a man hanging onto a semi-truck's mirrors on I-85 in both DeKalb and Gwinnett counties. That's not what they see on the semi. It's not mirrors. It's the handles of the trailer doors is in this photograph. The police department also showed a video of a person wearing a red hanging on the back of a moving semi as it travels at highway speeds. So, and they are considered stowaways. And this is what they said in an issued statement. We realize this may come as a surprise to some, but riding on the outside of a semi-truck that's going 65 to 75 miles an hour or faster, or any moving vehicle on I-285, I-75, or any other road at any speed is a death wish of sorts. No, it's a death wish, period. These acts put not only the stowaway clinging to the massive truck at risk, but the drivers behind and next to the violated truck are also in danger. If the person getting the free ride, air quotes, loses their balance and falls off or jumps off the moving vehicle, they will almost certainly be struck by other cars that are nearby, possibly injuring other drivers and causing a multi-car collision as others try to avoid being in the fray. This hazardous buffoonery by Atlanta's wayward souls will not be tolerated. There is nothing humorous about jeopardizing the safety of drivers or persons. They're just plain frickin' stupid. We ask, and that's me saying that, we ask people who see these incidents to put their cameras down and use their phones to instead call 911. The safety of our citizens is our number one priority. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. And how about after that we take a short Julia's Truck Cafe is brought to you by My Patriot Supply. As truck drivers, we all know what it's like to be at a shipper's or receiver's and have to wait to be loaded for hours on end. Am I right? Especially produce coolers and paper mills. That's why you need to be prepared with extra food in your truck, especially with the bad weather coming in, like it is over here in Kansas. Up in the Dakotas and Minnesota, 90 was shut down, Interstate 94 was shut down, along with 29. What are you going to do if there's no food and a truck stop was without power? That's why you need to stay prepared with My Patriot Supply. Now, it's not what you're thinking. My Patriot Supply is delicious emergency food. They have food kits that are good up to 25 years. They come in a slimline tote that you can easily store in your food pantry or under your bunk. I could speak from experience. After living through Hurricane Katrina, we were without power for 10 days, me, my mother, and son, and I. If it weren't for the MREs that were flown into us, we wouldn't have any food. There was 4 60-foot pine trees that broke in half during that storm and crossed my driveway and landlocked me in. That's when My Patriot Supply would have come in handy. If I knew then what I know now about My Patriot Supply, I definitely have some of this food stockpiled in my pantry. Now, for a limited time, you could get a 1-week supply of food in a handy and neat looking ammo can, like you see here, for just $39. Look at all that food you get. It's a week's worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinners, just for $39. How do you get it? Where do you go, do you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Just go to my website at juliastruckcafe.com, click on the Emergency Food Supply tab, scroll down and click on any of the images to find out more information and get yours today. They even offer gluten-free food for under $100. Winter weather is here. What would you do if the interstate was shut down, just like I was talking about? You need to get My Patriot Supply and get it today. Welcome back to Julia's Truckin' Cafe Truckin' News Hour. Thank you so much for continuing to join me and listening in. And in this next story, nearly 1/4 of motorists don't know that the move over law even exists. A new study from the American Automobile Association shows that almost 1/4 of motorists don't even know that slow down move over laws even exist. According to the same study, 42% of drivers know about the laws but don't follow them. In light of these statistics, officials are urging anyone behind the wheel of a vehicle to remain vigilant, defensive driving, and follow these laws for the safety of everybody. But on the flip side of that, you don't need to stop in the middle of the interstate because nobody will let you in. That's another problem I'm having out here. I almost got in an accident over the weekend in Arkansas because there was a cop pulled somebody over on the shoulder. He was way off the solid line on the shoulder. He was way off the side. Nobody would let me move in, or 2 cars in front of me. They stopped. A semi-truck stopped dead in the middle of the interstate. He wasn't trying to let anybody in. He stopped dead for no reason. There was nobody stopped in front of him. They had a half a mile before any cars were in front of him, and he stops dead. I almost rear-ended somebody because of that stupidity. You don't stop dead. He's already in the left lane, nobody in front of him, like I mentioned, and he stops dead in the interstate. And nobody was trying to merge either. There was nobody around him. I'm like, are you kidding me? Oh my goodness. It's just, you don't just ease on by. Keep your speed. You're over in the left lane. Keep going. Don't bother what's going on over there. If they have 15 cops around one car, which they normally do, don't bother looking. Keep on going. Mind your own damn business, like everybody tells me to do. But anyway, back to the story. Quote, you could literally be saving somebody's life, quote, said Marie Dodds, the Director of Government and Public Affairs for AAA, Oregon, and Ohio. Quote, right now we have a family in Yokohama, Washington, that's mourning the loss of a driver who died just a week ago. If people would have complied with slow down, move over laws, he would still be alive today. End quote. That man was killed by a speeding semi-truck. That's bullshit. Since July, 3 AAA tow truck drivers have been killed on the side of the road. The AAA suggests that drivers move over and slow down to at least 5 miles under the posted speed limit whenever they come across someone on the side of the road. Like I said, you can move over if people let you. But that's the point they're not talking about. So I'm really tempted to get a hold of this Marie Dodds, and she's only with Oregon and Idaho, AAA. So they're not understanding the rest of what's going on in the rest other parts of the country, I'm trying to say. And in this story, anti-idling laws and unsafe parking, a life-saving pet story. A trucker's pet Rottweiler saves his life in the face of heated issues like Atlanta's unsafe parking conditions and anti-idling laws. Quote, the driver is quoting, he saved my life. There was blood everywhere. It took 3 days to clean up. Joplin is a dashingly handsome Rottweiler that makes an appearance every year at the Joplin Truck Show. GBATS, where he was adopted 4 years ago by driver Gary Harmon. But he's not the hero of the story. Instead, he's the mere tribute of Gary's last pet, guardian, and friend Kiev, who once battled a thief to save Gary's life from an intruder. Like many drivers, Gary has had to show courage on more than one occasion to brave the unsafe parking conditions in many of America's major cities. And this wasn't the only time that Gary has had to make choices to save his life, often relying on the show of his gun to deter thieves and those that have threatened him. I try to park at safe places, being a solo woman out here, and I don't go in any place until it's an hour or two before my delivery. I'll stay out of Atlanta, New Jersey, Chicago. I'll be an hour out. Trip planning. That's all I can say. But back to the story. But one fateful night in Atlanta, Gary was not armed. He was sitting up in his cab with his laptop when a man fueled with a drug rage targeted him. This man came through his window. It stood ajar against the southern heat and in compliance with anti-idling laws that prevent drivers from running their air conditioning, no matter the temperature or compromise safety. BS! I call BS on that. I'm going to idle my damn truck, and I know a lot of you guys do the same. Quote, in Atlanta, the law states, no person shall stop or stand any truck or bus on any street or public place and idle for more than 15 minutes. Violators will face a minimum of fine of $500, end quote. Yes, that law is there, but do they enforce it? No. Gary Let me start over. Gary may have been caught unawares, but Kiev was ready to defend him. He leapt at the attacker and held him at bay until police arrived. The thief may have wanted the laptop, but he didn't know that the truck's cargo was highly valuable. Kiev had an uncanny ability to sort out who was on the shipper's receiving team. He would always guard the cargo from outsiders and keep the load safe. Kiev has since passed away, but Gary had his ashes placed in a Southwestern-style urn on the trucker's dash so that he could be on the road forever with the driver that he loved. Gary is choked up, standing beside his rig with the doors emblazoned with the names of Kiev and Joplin as he clears his throat. He expresses frustration with unsafe states that have dangerous parking but pass strict gun legislation like New Jersey, which has laws against his right to carry a weapon. He intones, no matter what, I'm coming back alive. He'd rather carry a gun than run his truck. Is that what I'm thinking? I'm sorry, but I'm going to run my damn truck and keep the windows shut. There again, 33 years out here. I haven't had a problem. Not once. And in this story, 2 are in custody for stealing a rig packed with children's toys. 2 people have been arrested for the theft of a tractor trailer full of children's toys in Los Angeles. The truck was stolen on September 27th, and the 2 individuals were arrested the next day, just after 10 a.m. According to the local news, the owner of the rig contacted police to let them know that his rig had been stolen, but notified officers that it was equipped with GPS. With the help of the GPS, officers were able to locate the stolen rig in the 1500 block of Valley Boulevard in Fontana, where the truck in question was parked in plain view. Officers then conducted an occupied vehicle check and discovered 2 men inside. Neither individual had permission to possess the truck, and so were arrested on charges of possession of a stolen vehicle and conspiracy to commit a crime. Both men, 32-year-old Antonio Garcia and 21-year-old Jose, can't even pronounce that name, were booked into the West Valley Detention Center. Police are still investigating and urge anyone with information on the incident to contact investigators at the Fontana Sheriff's Station. And in this story, next story, a trucker is sentenced to 15 years for an encounter with a minor that resulted in the birth of his child. A trucker has been sentenced to 15 years in prison after having sexual relations with at least one of 2 minors while on a trip in his truck, which resulted in the birth of his child. 33-year-old David Skaggs of Cahokia, Illinois, began talking with a 15-year-old boy from Lee County, Virginia via Facebook in 2015. Skaggs and the boy, referred to in court documents as AA, developed a friendship, and Skaggs became familiar with the entire family, including his 13-year-old sister. In August of 2015, Skaggs picked up the boy and his sister from the home in Virginia and took them on a long trip in his semi-truck to South Dakota. Once there, Skaggs purchased alcohol for the minors, and all 3 of them sat in his truck and drank. Once the boy had fallen asleep, Skaggs had sex with the 13-year-old, and she later gave birth to his child. Skaggs was sentenced to 15 years in prison on September 30th for transporting 2 minors to South Dakota and engaging in sexual conduct and activity. How gross. I'm like, I don't care how old these girls are looking, she was still 13 years old. And up next, a trucking company owner admits to covering up a fatal tanker explosion and is arrested on PPP fraud, or the government was giving them money for the payroll and everything. A man who owns multiple California trucking companies has pled guilty to felony charges including conspiracy, tax evasion, and fraud, and now faces a possibility of a 100-year federal prison sentence. On Wednesday, 63-year-old Carl Bradley Johansson pled guilty to 5 felony charges, including 1 count of a conspiracy to make illegal repairs on cargo tanks and to defraud the U.S. Department of Transportation. 1 count of welding without required certifications, and 1 count of tax evasion, 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, and 1 count of bank fraud. The charges were laid against Johansson in connection with a tanker explosion that seriously injured one worker and killed another in 2014. It took him that long, 7 years, to figure all this out. And for fraudulently obtaining Paycheck Protection Program, COVID-19 relief funds, while out on bond waiting trial in the tanker explosion case. And this is a pretty long statement. Sentencing will be scheduled for May 9th in 2022. I'll let you read the statement if you want to go to the show notes. Johansson faces a maximum sentence of 100 years in federal prison. Western Distribution LLC pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and 1 count of bank fraud. DSI and WDI also pled guilty to 1 count of conspiring to make illegal repairs on cargo tanks and defrauding the U.S. Department of Transportation. NDSI pled guilty to an additional count of welding without required certifications. The companies will also be facing sentencing on May 9th of 2022. Former safety manager for Johansson's trucking company, Donald Cameron Spicer, pled guilty in August to 1 count of conspiracy to violate federal law by causing illegal repairs on cargo tanks and defrauding the Department of Transportation. He faces sentencing in February of 2022. Garcia is set to go to trial on January 18th of 2022. U.S. Department of Transportation Inspector General and IRS criminal investigation assisted in this investigation. So that's a pretty big deal that they got really busted. So let's have some good news. A trucker helps a man fix his wheelchair when no one else would. A truck driver went out of his way to help a man who fell out of his wheelchair in Kansas. This happened the first week of October. According to the local news, a man in a motorized wheelchair was heading for the gas station in downtown Topeka when he fell over. Luckily, a truck driver happened to be passing by and sprang into action. The truck driver helped the man up and even helped to make a minor repair on his wheelchair. A witness to this says that she was amazed to see someone so genuinely kind to a stranger. Quote, "A lot of people would have just walked by," said Kelly Hogan. His wheelchair has got a problem? That's his problem. That's how a lot of people, their attitudes. And I thought that helping him up off the ground was one thing, but going above and beyond and taking your own personal time to work on somebody's stuff is a big deal in our day, end quote. The truck driver, Waylon B., says he just wanted to make sure that the man was okay, not just physically, but mentally as well. He also urged people to remember that good deeds bring good karma to those who perform them. That's right. Karma is a bitch, good or bad. Excuse me. And up next, 1 dead after pulling out in front of a semi-truck that was trying to avoid him. This happened the 30th of September in Maine. 1 person is dead after pulling out in front of a semi that was just trying to avoid him. According to the local news, 24-year-old trucker Shahib Singhji was traveling in the right lane of northbound Interstate 95 when he noticed a BMW pulled over into the breakdown lane. In response, he moved over into the middle lane to give the disabled vehicle some room. After he moved over, the BMW suddenly pulled out in front of the oncoming rig, causing a serious collision that sent both vehicles crashing into the guardrail. Officials say that the motorist, 52-year-old Brian Anger, was attempting to use the crossover, but is not clear why. Anger was pronounced dead on the scene, and Seizure was reported to a nearby hospital with minor injuries. And as of October 1st, the crash was still under investigation. And in this story, the DEA dismantles an Arkansas meth and money laundering ring that funded a trucking company. Federal authorities sentenced the last person involved in a drug drug operation that funded a trucking company, quote, effectively bringing to a close the significant criminal activities of an eastern Arkansas drug trafficking and money laundering organization, end quote. Tremaine Ontario Slaughter, 36, was sentenced to 7.5 years in federal prison to be followed by 5 years of supervised release. Slaughter pled guilty late last year to 1 count of conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute meth and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. During his sentencing, Slaughter agreed to forfeit numerous firearms and 5 vehicles, including 4 over-the-road trucks used by his trucking company and a Dodge Challenger. According to U.S. Attorney Office, Eastern District of Arkansas, Slaughter is the 4th and final defendant to be sentenced in connection to a large-scale meth and money laundering operation. Authorities say that from 2014 through 2018, Slaughter and his co-defendants, Smith of South Haven, Mississippi, Davis of Colt, Montana, Smith of Parkin, were involved in a meth distribution operation in Forest City, Arkansas. The operation reportedly involved the use of couriers who rode the megabus from Memphis to Dallas and back to import meth from the Dallas area. The group also imported meth from California via U.S. mail and other mailing services. Drug proceeds were reportedly used to fund the trucking company Prudent Transport, as well as rental property business called Upscale Properties. Quote, analysis showed that there was $877,359.60 in cash expenditures on vehicles and other items that did not come from the accounts, including purchase of tractor trailers for the trucking business. In November of 2020, Smith pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, and on May 26, 2021 was sentenced to 33 months in prison. In November 2020, Davis pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute methamphetamine, and on June 8, 2021, he was sentenced to 51 months in prison. In November 2022, Montana Smith pled guilty to imprison of a felony, and on June 9, 2021, he was sentenced to 5 years probation. The case was investigated by the DEA of Little Rock Field Office and IRS Criminal Investigation, along with the assistance of the Little Rock PD. And a company is announcing a price increase for truck drivers amid unparalleled rise of freight and operational costs. October 1st statement, maker of Yokohama explained that the price increase is a result of rising costs for freight and materials. This is the second truck tire price hike that the company has introduced in the past few months. Yokohama announced a previous price increase in July of 2021 and went into effect in August. That's all I'm going to say about that. And sadly, a Memphis police officer was struck by a semi. An officer with the Memphis PD lost his life over the first weekend of October when he was struck by a semi while assisting in a previous crash. The incident occurred shortly after 11 a.m., October 2nd in Memphis. 34-year-old Officer Daryl Adams was investigating a 2-vehicle crash on I-40 westbound North Watkins when he was hit by an oncoming 18-wheeler. Adams suffered fatal injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. According to Memphis Police Department, the truck driver involved in the fatal incident was detained but was not charged. The incident was being handled by a Tennessee Highway Patrol. Adams worked for the Memphis PD since April of 2016. And a little bit of good news. A truck driver is praised for saving a high school football team from a sudden bus fire. This happened right around the 24th, or the incident happened on September 24th on Interstate 75 in Kentucky. According to the local news, trucker Alvin Edwards was heading down the road when he noticed a bus hauling an entire football team had caught fire without anyone on board seeming to notice. Edwards was eventually able to flag down the bus driver, who brought the bus to a stop, and that's when Edwards sprung into action. He went to help him. Come on. He said, "I yelled, the bus is on fire." Well, what would you do? The wheel's on fire. You need to pull the bus over. He immediately grabbed his fire extinguisher and attempted to put out the flames. He said, "At this point, I see the fire. I say it's not going out. It's not going to go out. It's getting worse. Everybody get out. Everybody get out of the bus." Thankfully, the entire high school football team, coaches, and bus driver were able to exit the bus before any serious damage was done, all because of one truck driver. Edwards said that he was not supposed to have been going down that direction on I-75, but they had made a wrong turn after stopping to get something to eat. Quote, "I felt like it was my own kids in there. I went into protection mode and I had to get them out, you know? There's no way in the world I would not have done anything that when I see a school bus with kids in it on fire," end quote. In honor of his heroic deed, the football team invited Edwards, who lives in Carrollton, Texas, back to Kentucky for their rivalry game last Friday. In addition, he was honored with a signed jersey from the football team with the number 35, the same number of people that were on the bus, a key to the city. It was named Kentucky Colonel, the highest honor given by the state's governor. "I get a little emotional thinking about it," Edwards continued. Quote, "It was something, it really was. The team crowded me like we had won a football game. They were slapping me on my bald head, giving me hugs, shaking my hand." And there's still no information on what led to the bus fire. Probably, I'm just assuming it could probably have been, bad bearings or anything like that, or brake got hung up, anything like that could happen. And in our last story for this episode, a woman is arrested after reversing into a semi-truck on a highway. A woman has been taken into custody after driving in reverse on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and striking an oncoming semi. The accident happened Friday, October 1st, just after 9 p.m. in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, on the Turnpike. The unnamed woman was driving a Nissan Frontier in the left lane between mile markers 96.4 and 98.1 when she struck the barrier twice, threw the car into reverse, and began traveling backwards in the right lane. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. I had to get a drink. In response to the dangerous behavior, an oncoming truck driver and a Freightliner moved into the left lane to avoid the car. But the motorist managed to reverse into the big rig anyway, sideswiping it. When police arrived, both the rig and the car were stopped on the side of the road, but the motorist, 45-year-old Christina Phillips, was attempting to flee the scene. She was then arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence. No injuries were reported. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you who tune in to listen to me each week here on the cafe. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe using the link below, or on CloudHub, please subscribe at the top of the page. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. As I said, please, if you wouldn't mind, stop in if you're on Facebook and give us a like on Facebook. Also join our discussion group at Julia's Truckin' Cafe Regulars. And if you wouldn't mind, subscribing to our newsletter at juliastruckatcafe.com/newsletter. So thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time. You have been listening to Julia's Truckin' Cafe Truckin' News Hour. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Take care. Have a blessed day.